gm.co.uk. 18 plus, gambleaware.org. Please gamble responsibly. How are we doing, guys? How are you finding the international break? I'll start with you, CJ. Glad it's over?
I'm glad it's over, man. I mean, we all know we lost the cup. We're all itching to see Arsenal get back to winning ways. You know, I'm sure we'll get into it, but we've seen a lot of our players excelling on the international stage. So, yeah, let's get back to business, Harry, man. Pleasure to be here.
Clarky, you said that you went off on a little trip to try and recharge for the running, was it?
Absolutely. Yeah, look, there's some big pressure games coming up, and I need to be nicely rested for it. Yeah, look, it's going to be busy. It's going to be exciting. It's the right kind of pressure. You want to be involved at the business end of every season in the biggest matches, and look, Arsenal are going to be, every match is going to matter greatly. So yeah, look, I can't wait for it. And as CJ just said, we got beat in that cup final. We've had a while to stew on that, and it's now the time to sort of erase that and build moving forwards, hopefully to an unbelievable record-breaking, history-making climax.
Fingers crossed, everybody. CJ, look, we can't avoid the elephant in the room, which has been the multiple withdrawals from international duty. I think there was 10, although sometimes I think it's 10, sometimes I think it's 11. I keep losing track. There's been so many, basically. What have you made of all of this? I mean, are you concerned? Do you think it's Arsenal being clever? There's been a huge reaction to this in the media, in part, I think, because it is an international break and there's not a million things to talk about. But what are your feelings kind of coming out the other side of it, knowing that we've got players that their fitness is in doubt?
H, you said it there, it's a bit of everything. The reaction is mind-boggling, if I'm completely honest with you, because Sir Alex Ferguson used to do this every week. I think I speak for many an Arsenal fan where we've said we've wanted to see our players. Obviously, you want them to play for their country. There's no highest honour, but you've wanted them to pull out of international duty. Saka and Rice in particular. You're at that point in the season where I very much doubt any player of any club hasn't got a knock or a niggle or things of that ilk. As we was kind of talking about off air, if you take the kind of basic view, of course, your players are at home with their feet up, they're resting, ready to go, as Clarkey said, with the business end. But it's not like we haven't got knocks and concerns. You're always nervous when a Calafiori goes out. We all saw in the Spain training how Zubamendi's knee was taped up and things of that ilk. So it's a conflicting one. I don't get the reaction. I understand there's not much to talk about. And, you talk about Arsenal on the airwaves, that's how you get your engagement. But I'm kind of fine with it. But I don't want fans to be complacent. I do think there's a bit of a concern. And I know we'll get into it, guys, but you do kind of wonder who is going to be in the squad, let alone start in the Southampton game in the FA Cup.
Absolutely. I mean, Clarkey, we know that when it's Arsenal, it's always a bigger story. We know it's always going to get that extra attention. But I guess my issue with this has been that list that keeps doing the rounds includes a number of players that weren't available for the cup final. So, that completely being overlooked has frustrated me. What have you made of, A, the volume of players that we've got concern over, but B, the reaction to it?
Yeah, the reaction, it doesn't surprise me because I think, the media enjoy sort of teasing Arsenal supporters a little bit. We're always, there seems to be a story. If it's Man City doing it, no one seems to care. But,
Facts.
We should take it as a compliment. It's, we're a big club, we're big players, and everyone sort of wants to talk about us. But I'll be honest, for me, it's a big negative. I'm not rejoicing here that we've had so many players out over the international break, because clearly those international medical teams have looked at our players and said that they're not in great nick.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a concern, whether it's a bona fide injury or whether it's in that sort of red zone of fatigue. Our guys haven't been in great shape. And ahead of the biggest sort of 6 to 8 weeks of their lives, you'd prefer them to be in better condition. So yeah, it's certainly not Arsenal being clever. I don't think this is mildly alarming. Hopefully, by the time that big game against Bournemouth comes around, in particular, a lot of these players will be fit and available to play. So it's worrying for me.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I'll just quickly read off the list that is going around. Gabriel, Saliba, Timber, Eza, Rice, Saka, Madueke, Nkapie, Trossard, Zubimendi and Odegaard. They're all players that there is doubt and concern around. CJ, is there anyone in particular that you're worried about? Because this is a lot of Arsenal's starting 11, so I can understand why there's a broader concern here. But is there anyone specifically that you're looking at on this list and thinking, I'm a bit worried about his particular situation.
It would be Zubamendi first and foremost, purely because, you know, he's played a lot of minutes. He's playing a lot of minutes. His knee was taped up. As Clarkey said, like, obviously, if he's gone off to international break, the medical staff of the international team have probably seen something to not want to risk it, but that makes you a bit nervous and concerned. So for me, it would obviously be him. Of course, there's no getting around Noni Madueke. You know, that's that typical thing of why some people don't want your players to play in these international friendlies, because you get moments like that. And the right wing does concern me. You know, Saka is looking a bit spent and his form isn't quite there. Noni obviously being injured. We're getting into the penultimate stage of the season. We need every player, but I would say naturally every one of those players. I would say Saliba pulling out, because throughout the whole season he's had that little ankle injury and knock. Calafiori went there with an injury, and obviously I think he played 120 minutes for Italy. So I would say all of them, but if you were to press me on an answer, Zubamendi, because of the knock-on effects, God forbid, if he's not there, what we do in midfield. But it's also, I know he actually played, but it's someone like Kai Havertz who has had injuries and then gone off and got a lot of minutes for Germany. What does that mean when he comes back? So yeah, if that answers your question, I'll go with Zubi, man.
Clark, is anyone in particular that you're concerned about? Again, I'll say it again. There's worry across the board, but is there anyone that jumps out to you?
Well, the two centre halves are clearly. I'm hopeful that they're among the sort of minor injuries that with Gabriel and Saliba. I think I'd probably go along with CJ in the midfield, because we just don't have big numbers. So I'll go for the other guy, Declan Rice. Now, whether it's a a proper injury or whether it's fatigue, I don't know. I suspect he's been carrying things for months, if truth be told. And with all these big games coming around in 3 competitions that Arsenal absolutely have their eyes on winning, we need Declan Rice. We absolutely need him. He is a talisman. He's been brilliant this season. Well, he's been brilliant ever since he came in. But without his legs, without that power, that drive, that leadership, Arsenal are going to struggle a little bit in some of these matches that really, really matter. So we need Declan fit and fresh and ready to go. Now, when's that going to be? I suspect it might be Sporting rather than Southampton.
Yeah, I think so as well. I think you're right, both of you, to highlight the midfield. I think, yes, we look at the centre halves and obviously, there is concern there, but we've got cover there. And also, there is a part of me that feels like, in particular with Gabriel, given what happened when he went on international duty earlier in the season, Brazil have maybe looked at this and gone, look, we kind of owe Arsenal one here. Let's just look after him a little bit more. But the midfield is the area that really concerns me, because even when there's been opportunities to play Christian Norgard, I think, and protect the other two, there's been a reluctance to do that, particularly in the Premier League, from Mikel Arteta, which suggests, and I don't know for sure, but that he fears there's a bit of a drop-off there. And if he fears it, then I fear it. But in terms of some of the positives from the international break, and I'll come to you first, Clarky, on this one. You got Victor Gyökeres scores a hat-trick against Ukraine and then a late winner against Poland to send Sweden to the World Cup. Mosquera made his senior debut for Spain. Ben White back in the England squad and got a goal. There are some positives, right? So the international break can be a good thing for some.
Oh, definitely. Of course it can. Yeah, and players have got valuable minutes like Havertz as well. So, but for Gyökeres, it's the confidence. It's that belief. He's got the biggest games of his club career coming up, hasn't he? Between now and sort of the end of May. And we want him to be feeling as good about himself as possible. And he must be feeling on top of the world. That hat-trick was superb. And then, of course, the goal that ultimately took Sweden to the World Cup. I liked it. It was a typical Gyökeres goal. He sort of muscles his way past the defender and lashes it into the net. It was sort of a fearless finish. And, he's had a lot of praise, a lot of attention back in his homeland. And yeah, look, he couldn't be in a better frame of mind coming into these huge games. So that, for me, was the big positive of the international window. We mustn't forget that wonder goal from Max Dowman. I'm sure you were going to get to it, Harry, but I mean, that was another moment that made your jaw drop, wasn't it? It was like, whoa, okay. Yeah. This is a kid playing 3 years up at international level, which in itself is amazing. Then he scores a goal, that any player on the planet would have been proud of, doing that. So, he'll come back feeling 10 feet tall as well.
Yeah, for sure. His emergence has eased my worries a little bit about the right wing, because I don't care how young he is. He's good enough, man.
Ridiculous.
He's absolutely good enough. CJ, where'd you stand on the whole Ben White thing? Because obviously he comes back into the group. We know what a good player Ben White is. We know how useful he can be, both at right back and at centre back. I can completely understand why Thomas Tuchel wanted to get him back in and why he's using him. But there was a mixed reaction from some of the England fans. What did you make of that? I mean, before I say my bit on this, it's probably the one rant I'm going to have today. But what did you kind of make of it?
Harry, there's three sides to every story, innit? There's whatever the media is saying, there's Benjamin White's side, and whatever England coach has to say. I feel sorry for Benjamin White. You know, there's no highest honour than playing for your country and playing for your nation. Obviously, he's returned from, you know, being out in the wilderness. He's got minutes in the legs. He's obviously scored. It's not nice, is it? Like, everyone has their own opinion. You can boo him if you want to do it. I personally think that's not on. When you put on the England shirt, you have to support the lads. And I think it's one where maybe when his career is ending, Ben White will come out and speak about it, because I think one thing that's interesting is how his fellow England teammates are speaking about him. Like, they're saying, I think it was Jordan Henderson, he said not everything that's being reported is what it seems. So clearly there's a reluctance to like say what's what, and they'd rather just get on with business. I think Ben White's a solid lad. He's shown that he doesn't really care about what external forces have to say. We all remember when people twisted his words about he doesn't like football. Listen, you don't play for Arsenal and under Mikel Arteta and for your country if you don't care about football. So it's unfortunate. It's not on. And half the people that booed him, when he scored, they celebrated. And no doubt if he goes off to the World Cup, they'll do the same. So for me, it's annoying. It's jarring. But for someone like Benjamin White, it's water off a duck's back, man. Like, he's shown he doesn't really give a monkeys about opinions, man. It's annoying, though.
As long as he's fit, England are a better team with him in it.
Exactly.
A better squad with him in it. You can debate about who starts at right back, fine. But as long as Ben White's fit and available, he is an asset to this England group. And I cannot for the life of me understand why he's being treated like this. It's not like when Ben White left the England camp originally, he came out and spread all this negativity and toxicity. He kept his mouth completely shut, exactly. He got on with it. He showed a professionalism, whether people like it or not. Clarky, you've played the game at professional level. I'm not suggesting for a second that you were ever booed by your own fans. But you're in a better position than any of us to understand the kind of impact that might have on the player. What's your kind of take on it?
Yeah, it's a good point. No, I don't think I did. So I'd like to think I'd remember it.
I'm pretty sure Perry told me once that he had been booed by his own fans.
Yeah, which it can happen, and you know, you make mistakes, and you know, boos happen, and you know, you want the ground to swallow you up. It's, you know, it's not a nice feeling, I'd imagine. So I think with these, it's a bunch of teenagers or drunk blokes that are just sort of creating this pantomime villain character. You know, that they're believing what they're reading, and they just think it'll be fun to give him a boo. There's absolutely no way in the world that Ben White walked out on England, that he voluntarily said, I don't want to represent my country for the next 4 years. I just don't want to do it. There's no way that he would have.
And if he did, he wouldn't be back now, would he?
No, exactly. There's more to it. There's much more to it. We don't know the ins and outs of it. And I think we just have to accept that there was a clash of personalities, and he took himself out of that situation. And I think he deserves respect for that in a way. The only downbeat thing I feel about this is that I wish it was the Ben White that was at optimum pace, because I think at the moment we're getting Ben White at sort of 60-70% of his capacity. This isn't the player that he was maybe 2 or 3 years ago. He needs more football. He needs a little bit more confidence. He needs a longer run without injury. If he can regain the standards he set before, ask Bukayo Saka who he wants playing behind him at the World Cup. And I'd be surprised if it isn't Ben White. So but Reece James is the favourite. He's going to play, isn't he? But and Livramento's a very good player. But I would have White in over Jed Spence every day of the week. And he obviously offers, cover at centre-back. I'd also have him over, sort of one or two of the centre-back options, maybe an injury-prone John Stones, who you can't really rely on at the moment. So I think he's got a chance, but he's not in tip-top form, I don't think, Ben White. So he might miss out.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think his capacity at centre-back as well is key. To why I would pick him if I was Thomas Tuchel. Let's touch on a couple of other Arsenal-related stories. Lewis-Skelly is another player who hasn't really had the minutes this season that We hoped he would have. Obviously, Arsenal have got two fantastic players at left back in Calafiori and Nketiah, so it's not easy. There have been some reports, CJ, that Manchester United are looking at him. I'm not going to take those as gospel. I'm not going to read into them too much. International break type reporting, that's what I call it. But he is a Hale End product. He does mean a lot to us as fans. Is there a world in which Arsenal consider selling him in the summer, given the way his role's changed in your view?
I hope not, but I'd be an idiot if I suggested that, when Berta and Mikel Arteta are looking at what they could do for next season. And, again, you can't take reports for gospel, but it does seem like we're not necessarily struggling financially, but we'd like to get even more control on the wages and probably bring a bit of money in. Unfortunately, where you look at the Hay lenders like a Wanyeri, like a Miles Lewis-Skelly, they'll probably fetch the highest fee. But as you said, they've come from the academy, they're the future of this football club. It'd be a shame for them to go. I don't doubt if Man United are interested. It's like if Lionel Messi became interested, we all be interested. But so much dominoes need to fall. I think everything should be on the table for Miles Lewis-Skelly. Being a bit patient and waiting for your opportunity, going out on loan and things of that ilk. Like, it'd be a crime if he left. He's another one. I know we spoke about Max Dowman, but him and Wanyeri did very well for England's under-21s. It's a bit of a weird one because it's just the reality of playing for a team competing for a Premier League. You had that rise last season where you're playing in the Champions League. Obviously, Nketiah and Calafiori have taken their chances. Their left-back roles kind of changed. A bit like how you feel about Norgard and what we was talking about earlier with Zubi and Rice. I've wondered why Mikel Arteta doesn't give Miles Lewis-Skelly an opportunity in midfield. Does he think now's not the right time? Is he lacking something in his game? So if you're not going to get a look in at left-back because that's changed and Arteta's not deviating away from the pivot, you can't really complain about the minutes. But I don't buy the Man United rumours. I mean, even when you just type in Man United on Google, they're linked with Lewis Hall, they're linked with Livramento, they're linked with several players that can play left back. So, as you said, I think it's just a case of there ain't much to talk about in terms of, the international break. This is a great story. Lewis-Skelly's the future of our football club, and it will get people going. For me, it'd be a shame because I didn't subscribe to it, but people were saying he's a future captain, he's a future, he's the next Ashley Cole. We have to give him an opportunity. It's weird because he's 19 years of age and, it's very difficult to go back to what you're facing now when you had that great season last year. But I like the fact that you have to try and get minutes. I like the fact that, when Saka and Smith Rowe and all those players came through, we was reliant on them. These young players can be kids. So under no circumstances, if it was up to me, should Miles Lewis-Skelly be sold? I'd love to see him play more. And I hope he does in what's left of the season, Harry.
Clark, is he a midfielder in the making? I know that's where he started in his development. Is that the future for him? Is that how we find a way of getting him back involved that little bit more?
I think so. Yeah, look, I think if we're going to use that sort of terminology, in a sense, it would be criminal to let him go. It'd be criminal to let him leave without giving him a go in central midfield, which is the position that he was trained at. That's his natural position, and I think his attributes actually offer this team something that we sometimes miss, particularly if Declan Rice isn't available. Because Declan Rice is a driver, isn't he? He carries the ball. He takes the team up the pitch. That's not what Zubimendi does. It's not what Christian Norgard does. Lewis-Skelly can be that guy. He can be the ball carrier that breaks the lines, that brings the athleticism. We've seen what a calm temperament he's got as well. Played in some huge games. This season's been a bit of a nightmare for him. We can't get away from that. His performances at left back as a defender have been poor. So my gut is telling me, or my eyes are telling me, I'm not sure he's a left back. I'm not sure that at the very highest level of football, that at this point his defensive nous and defensive quality is enough to be a starter for Arsenal. In these huge games at left back, in central midfield, I think that there's room for massive growth. He's 19.
Yeah,
like most players at 19 haven't made a first team appearance. If they have, they're the lucky ones. He's got a wealth of it. So yeah, look, let's let him grow as a player, and I hope that he's allowed to grow as a central midfielder at Arsenal, because I think he's got plenty to offer.
Yeah, I completely agree with your point around the attributes. I love the way he uses his body on the half turn and can get you out of a situation. Strong. You mentioned the City game, Clark. I think you mentioned the City game where we were trying to play through. And there was no one that was willing to kind of take the ball on the half turn and try and go through the line himself and carry it. We know he's got the confidence to do that. We know he's got the quality to do that. And we know he's got all the attributes required. Elsewhere, Arsenal women have made it to yet another Champions League semi-final. They beat Chelsea 3-2 on aggregate. CJ, how good is it to have a club right now that at every sort of level is producing, is competing? It feels like Arsenal as a football club are in a really strong place, and it's great to see.
It's amazing to see, big up the ladies. Hopefully they retain the Champions League and they bring it all the way home. They obviously beat Chelsea. That's something you see the men, the women and the young kids do for our football club. So this is what we like. This was the whole point, to move to the Emirates, to grow the academy, to grow the men's game, to grow the women's game. And, football's for everyone, as we know, regardless of, if you're a man or a woman, and you want to see us excelling on all stages. And, we're drivers of the women game, like we're pioneers of it. So it doesn't surprise me that the women are doing so well. Long may it continue, Harry, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Clarky, it is brilliant to see, isn't it? And, another potential Champions League for the Arsenal women would just be incredible.
Yeah, it'd be sensational. And look, I watched the tie against Chelsea, and we deserve to go through. I mean, don't believe, if anyone hasn't seen it, that 1-0 scoreline for Chelsea was definitely flattering. Arsenal could have scored 3 or 4 goals in the second half. I thought it was a very polished, accomplished performance. Didn't park the bus. We went and tried to control it in their half and knock the ball around with real confidence. It's really breakaways from Chelsea and a sort of gung-ho effort right at the end. That was the only issues we have. Obviously, the goalie was brilliant, Van Domselaar. You'll see the highlights and see she made some great saves. But I'll tell you what, Arsenal were better than Chelsea over the 2 legs. And, yeah, they'll be eyeing maybe a potential rematch with Barcelona in the final. Obviously, we don't know at the moment whether it'll be Lyon or Wolfsburg in the semi, but I think Barca will make the showpiece again.
Yeah, absolutely. Fingers crossed for the Arsenal women, of course. Now, Arsenal return to action this weekend. The international break is over and the Gunners take on Southampton away in the FA Cup. Tricky game for me, this one. 8 p.m. away on a Saturday, South Coast. Probably going to be quite windy, according to the weather forecast as well, which is never ideal. Adrian, we touched on it a little bit earlier on, but the disappointment at Wembley in the Carabao Cup final is something that we've had to, as you said, stew over the last couple of weeks. Does the importance, or has the importance of this game increased in your view off the back of that defeat in the Carabao Cup?
I think so. Yeah, I think it's really important that Arsenal win and maybe win well. It doesn't really matter how we win, of course, but yeah, we don't want double disappointment, do we? In the cups, you don't want to go from a quadruple to then only having the Premier League and the Champions League available. So no, Arsenal need to win this game and need to put out as strong a team as they can, for sure. Southampton are in great form, 14 unbeaten. The new managers, Tonda Eka, has sort of breathed new life into them. They're not a poor side. I think their weakness is at the back, so we can absolutely get at them, and that they'll try and play out, and we can hopefully win the ball high and punish them. But got some good forward players, some good attacking midfielders that we would need to watch out for. For me, the goalie situation is really, really interesting. I think at the top of the show, you referenced Kepa and it being a big game for him. Will he play?
Would you play him? Would you play him?
I wouldn't. And then that's not blaming him solely for the cup defeat, because I didn't. I came on the show and said that Kepa was one mistake, but we had multiple players making lots of other mistakes for the goals. But I just think with Chelsea, City or Liverpool are going to go through, then you've got West Ham or Leeds. You're going to have, if we're going to progress, we're going to have 2 hard games to win the FA Cup. Do we really want to go back to Wembley to play potentially City or Liverpool, and face that a similar tactic, where they're sort of preying on Kepa's maybe nerves a little bit in terms of his distribution? I just think we've given him a crack. He's done very well this season by and large, but this is the business end. We want to win trophies, and none of them are guaranteed. So personally, I would take the opportunity to play David Raya, and that then takes away the fact that Kepa's played in every single round of the cup. I have to play him in the final. Yeah. I just think this is the time to think about Arsenal and not necessarily the individuals. We were unselfish in letting Ethan Nwaneri join Marseille on loan. And now I'm sure Mikel Arteta wouldn't mind him back and available. Okay, let's be a bit more selfish about the FA Cup and play. Let's play our strongest team.
Absolutely, it's Arsenal first, isn't it, CJ? Could that have been Kepa's last appearance this season? the
Do you know
Carabao
what?
Cup
In
final.
my heart of hearts, Harry, I actually think Mikel Arteta is going to start Kepa in the FA Cup purely because for me, I don't think me and you were on a show. I said for me, I wanted Raya to start. I do think it's a cop out purely just blaming him for the final. Of course, he's made the mistake, but there's kind of deeper issues. There might be a million regrets or conversations Arteta's had in his post-match analysis of that game of what we could have done better. From what I think I know of the manager, he made his bed, so he's going to lie in it. I don't think Kepa will be one. I see no reason as to why he won't play Kepa. Now, for me, I'm with Clarkey in that we've got to be cruel to Kepa to be kind to this football club. Raya is the better goalie. Obviously, we lost the final. We've had to sit on that with an international break. It's now all about momentum going into the FA Cup, going into the Premier League. Obviously, on Tuesday, we've got to play Sporting. So I don't think he's played his last game. I just want Kepa. I want the strongest team available. If anything, the only conversation I want to have is, do you start Max Dowman or Bukayo Saka? So for me, Raya has to go out there. We need to go on a bit of a run. And you can just imagine the headlines, God forbid, after we've had a bit of a break, we play Southampton, it goes left against an informed Championship side where a lot of us Arsenal fans should feel confident, but naturally, St Mary's Park, apologies, it does fill you with a bit of nerve. So for me, strongest team out there, and that has to be David Raya. He's your better goalie. He's the best goalie you have.
Yeah, and I think going back to the final just very, very briefly, my concern going into the game, and I said this at the time, was not necessarily about, Kepa making a mistake. I couldn't have envisaged him making the mistake that he did. It was about what it did for us tactically and how it made us too predictable and too easy to play against. And that has got to be the takeaway from that game, not he dropped the ball. Like, that can happen to any goalkeeper. David Raya's made mistakes this season as well, and at times has gotten away with it. Mistakes happen. It was the tactical element of it that I really struggled with. Clarkey, Max Dowman. I mean, it's difficult to know who else is going to be fit. We know that Max Dowman's fit, so it's hard to put an 11 together. But just in terms of some of the big calls, would you give him the nod? I mean, his last appearance was that amazing impact that he had against Everton off the bench in a huge Premier League game, a game that we could be looking back on in years to come and saying that was the key moment. Does he deserve the start now? Is that the way you go on Saturday?
I would start Max Dowman, yeah, for sure. I'm not saying I want to start him in every Premier League game. I do think we need to, take the pressure off him a little bit and maybe use him more as an impact sub between now and the end of the season. But we saw what he did against Mansfield Town. I thought he was outstanding.
Best player on the pitch, man.
He was, wasn't he? And look, this is a step up, Southampton, but he's more than good enough to start here. Yeah, we know he's fit and fresh, and we know that he's confident and he's in form. So let's unleash him. Now, the question is, where do we unleash him? Do we unleash him on the right wing and give Saka an extended breather because Noni's not going to be fit? Or do we play him at 10 where we've got no Eza and probably no Martin Odegaard, which means, do you go with Havertz there, or do you put Dowman in maybe the position that he'll end up in? So yeah, that for me is the big decision. I would lock him in right now